Hey there and welcome back. So in this next installment, we're going to be modeling the strawberry. Now the strawberry might be the most challenging of the four, but we're going to do this in stages. So let's first check out our reference. So let's look at some of these images here of the strawberry. So we're going to have to model the body here, and we're going to need to get these little seeds in here and the little dimples that the seeds sit into. And then we need to do this top crown section of the strawberry itself, these leaves. And one thing to note is the seeds are all the same size. So if we do some scaling to our object and we try and do some other thing modeling wise, we're going to end up with different size seeds. So I think I've happened upon a workflow that'll get us the seeds all the same size looking the way that we want. And it's not very difficult, and it's also a little flexible. We'll be able to go in and do that. So what we're going to do is we're going to apply the seeds to a separate object as a displacement map, and we're going to position those seeds using a texture replicator. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to generate our displacement map of the seed itself. So let's jump in and start modeling our seed. So this is just going to be very basic. So I'm just going to start out with the basic sphere. So I think actually, so let's just start out. If I hold down the control key, we're going to get this little green, and this is going to give us a unit primitive. So I could just click on that, and that's just going to generate our unit primitive here in the viewport. So that's a 1 meter sphere on there, and we're fine with this just being the standard sphere on that. For our purposes, that's going to work out great. So we're just going to select half of this, enable my move tool with the W key, and then don't want to move it all at once. So I'm going to get my fall off and my favorite, my cylinder here, make sure that is on the Y. And I think we want the ease in on this, and we're going to move this out so we get kind of a reverse teardrop or a raindrop sort of shape on that. And I think that is all that we need to do for modeling our seed. So I'm going to hit escape to drop that fall off. And then we're going to make a plane of which we're going to bake a displacement map out of on this. So I'm going to name this object seed. And then we're going to hit in to create a new object. And I'm just going to create this right at the origin. So we want the height and the width to be the same. So 4.5, I guess, is probably fine. 4.5. That should be able to get us what we want. All right, so hit Q to drop that. And this one we're going to need to throw a surface on really quick. The number of subdivisions in here, I should note, is not essential. I mean, you could actually have just one. This is just going to be for quickly baking out our object. So I'm going to hit the M key on there, and we're going to call this the seed baker. And we're going to make sure that that is centered in our universe. Now we're going to go back to our seed, and we want the seed actually, we look from a right view here, trying to get all the polygons selected. We want it to be tilted slightly, so I'm just going to hit my rotate tool here and rotate that out a little bit. And then I'm going to move that right so that edge. So we kind of want this flat edge to be right there at the origin. So that way the tip of the seed, excuse me, is going to be right at the surface of our eventual object. We also want to note here that we have 200 millimeters. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 5. So basically a meter back is how far we're going to go on that. And now when we bake this, we also want to make sure that our plane has, when the rays come back, that it's going to have something else to hit for the background section of that. So with the seed active, we're also going to draw another plane bigger than our first one. Size on that one doesn't really matter. Select all those polygons, and then make sure to put that behind the seed. So it doesn't need to be super far behind, but just a little bit behind. So with that said and that done, we're going to go in our seed baker here. I guess we could rename this seed baker. And then go in here. And then we want to create a new image. So we're going to go to Image Map, New Image. And we're going to call this Strawberry Seed Displace. So we're generating a PNG 16-bit here as a displacement map. So you want to make sure your save as type is set as a PNG 16-bit. And I'm just going to overwrite mine. And I think 1024 is probably plenty of resolution for what we're doing. It's a displacement, so it can be gray. And since we want it to be 16-bit, we need to enable this floating point option. So I want to set this now to the surface displacement on that. We're going to disable that since it's not going to be affecting our surface at all. I think my polygon normal is actually facing the incorrect direction, so I want to flip that. Somehow I got that backwards. Is that the case on both of them? Let's look. No, those normals are all facing the correct direction. So I got that one correct. Good thing I caught it before we started baking, and I would have been rather confused. So with this layer disabled, and the seed baker layer selected, you want to make sure that UV map is also selected if you're having some issues. And then we're going to go in here and we're going to right click right on that name, and we're going to say bake from object to texture. We want to put in 1 meter for that and then just click OK. That's going to bake us out our displacement map, and that background is solid black, which is exactly the result that we want. So I'm going to close that, and I'm going to make sure to go in here in my clips, and I'm going to hit save on that image to make sure that we actually save those pixels. And then I'm going to save my scene here really quick. So I'm just going to call this seed bake. I'm going to overwrite that here. So I'm just going to save my scene really quick. So we're going to hit save as. I'm just going to go to seed bake in the video 8 folder there, and then click save. I'm just going to be writing over so you can see exactly the file that I have. So this is the seed that we're going to use in another scene file next, that we're going to apply as the actual displacement. Alright, so now that we've created the displacement map for the seed, we need to create the body for the actual strawberry itself. So I'm going to take a slightly different approach of what I've done in the past for these, and we're going to use the sphere tool. And I want to make sure that my mode is set at tessellation, the polygon type is at Catmull-Clark, and you want to make sure that your subdivision level here is at a level of 4. So I'm going to click here as close as I can to the center point, and if you hold down Control, that'll constrain all of the axes at once. And we want to make this a 300 millimeter sphere for the radius. I'll just click the gang edit, 300 millimeter there, and then we want to make sure that that's centered on the 0, so we're going to hit 0 on that guy, and then escape. So now I'm going to select half of my object in polygons mode, and we're just going to start building out that strawberry shape. Only selected the back half. Let's use the middle mouse button, click that out, and we're going to hit Shift up arrow. I'm going to get my move tool active because we're going to be moving this down, but not all at once. So again, get my fall off. We're going to get the cylinder, set it on the Y, and that's going to be the bottom part of our berry. I think that looks pretty good. Probably even scale that very slightly, the R key. Now we're going to hit the left bracket key to invert that, Shift up to grow that 1. Now we're going to be changing our shape fall off to ease out. I'm going to hit the W again to move this, and we're going to be moving our top. So I think that is going to be the top of our berry shape. It escaped to drop that fall off. Now the center vertex has gone in just much too far, so I'm going to actually move that back up and maybe grow my selection and bring this whole thing back up a little bit more. So we wanted this sort of a hump around the edge, but we didn't want the center to come in quite so far. So I think that is good enough on making the strawberry model. Is actually all that we need. So now we're going to want to clone this 3 times. So I'm going to go into items mode here. And I'm going to name this guy called Berry Baker. Now I'm going to hit D, Control D, excuse me, and then Control D to get 3 clones of this. Now this one is going to be called Berry Flesh. And this one is going to be called Seed Body. And then now I want to save this object. So we're going to go to Save As. And we're going to call this Strawberry 01. This is going to be our strawberry model. So this is in the Video 8 folder again. So I'm just going to click Yes to overwrite. And you'll be able to see exactly the files that I'm working on. So in the Seed Baker, this is the first object that we're going to be working on. So I want to give this its own surface. So going 3 to get into polygons mode, and we're going to hit M, and I'm going to call this Seed Baker. And we want to bake that seed displacement map out into here. So click OK onto that. And I'm going to take a unique approach to creating the displacement map on this. So let's jump into doing that. So with the Seed Baker, the first thing we want to do is we want to add that image map that we just created. So that was the seed displace, so the strawberry seed displace object. So you can open that in the Content Textures folder. Now you're not going to see anything except for the whole object wrapped around your sphere right away. So in order to actually see what we're going to be doing next, we want to turn on a preview window. So by hitting F8, that will open that preview window up. So the next step is we're going to want to go into our texture locator for our strawberry seed. And this is going to be down at the bottom. And then we want to set our particle source as that Berry Baker object. And you can see now that it's assigned that little displacement texture at every position that we had a vertex on that object. So we want to make that smaller, maybe 0.1. And if you zoom in here, you kind of get this little fall off. So the hardness of the edge of that fall off is set by this gain value. And then the fall off bias. So on the sides here, it's not very important that we get those exactly where they are. Because we don't want them overlapping. If we left them all at the full size, then there would be a little bit of overlapping here at the bottom, and we don't want that. And since right now I have my texture just set as diffuse color, that allows us to see what it is we're doing very easily. And then I'm just going to bake that out as the diffuse and then reapply that as displacement. But in order to get those to match, we want to make sure the diffuse color is set to black so it matches that background color in our displacement. So I think that is actually probably a pretty good size for our seed. The texture locator, maybe 1.2, slightly bigger. 1.15. How about split the difference? So basically just using the rest of it, other than the fall off bias in game, we're just using the defaults for the rest of these values. So what we want to do is we want to bake this now into a full image map, because once we rotate our object and move it around, the orientation of the seeds when applied as a replicator is going to change, and we don't want that. Plus, we won't have to generate that calculation with every frame. So let's go in here, image map, and create another new image. And this one we're going to call it all seeds displacement. I'm just going to overwrite my existing file here by hitting save. And again, you want to make sure that's a 16-bit PNG file. So I'm going to keep this resolution at 2048. Again, make that gray. Floating point. Click OK on that. We're going to turn that off because we don't want to contribute to the final bake. And then make sure this is also set at diffuse color. And then we're just going to go in here and we're going to say bake to texture. So that's baked out the results of what we did with that texture replicator. So we want to go in here to our clips and make sure to save that image. So now we're going to go in here and we're going to go back to our other objects. So we're going to go to the seed body. And with that layer selected, we want to call this strawberry seeds. We're going to give this sort of a greenish yellow color. Just accept the defaults on that. And then now we're going to go into the shader tree. Open this up. Now this all seed displacement bake that we just generated, we can drop that right into this folder right here. And then we want to set this as a displacement. Now to make sure that that's actually a true displacement object, we want to make sure that the low value is set at -100. So that's going to make sure that we push those seeds that we baked into the object. So let's open up that preview again. See what our seeds are looking like. So we might not have enough resolution here. So let's go into that seed body object and go into the surface. Maybe boost the subdivision level up to 4 on both of those. And then reset our render just to make sure. Alright, I think that looks better. So the part that we're mainly interested in is this round part here across the top, and I think we're getting a good enough result for that. And the beauty of the way that we've created this is we could just enable that berry baker object again, disable the seed baker, and then we could take this all seed displacement, move it back into the seed baker object, and then we could adjust some settings on this displacement object, or the original strawberry seed displacement that we generated. So this would allow us to very quickly adjust the size. So if we get further down the road and decide, oh, the seeds are just too big or they're too small, then we could tweak that and rebake it and then move it right back into our strawberry seed displacement folder here. But I think our results here right off the bat are pretty good. So I'm going to turn that off. I'm going to turn on our berry flesh. Now I'm going to select these polygons, hit M, and we're going to call this the strawberry flesh. And we're going to give that a red color initially. Now the last step for actually modeling the strawberry body is going to be creating all of those little dimples that you see in the strawberry. We can do that very easily by selecting all the vertices. So middle mouse button, select through that object to select all of those vertices. Then we're going to go into the vertex toolbox and we want to do the vertex extrude. So click in the viewport and we're going to go back and then we're going to come out on that. This might be helpful to have the preview open on that so you can kind of see what the results are going to be of your beveling operation to make sure you're getting quite the size that you want. So I think a extrusion of 50 millimeters, -50, and a width of about 12 gets the results that I'm after. So I'm going to hit Q to drop that tool. So that is my basic strawberry body that we've just generated. So next up, we are going to generate the leafy cap on the top of the strawberry. So I believe that's called the strawberry top. So we'll jump on creating that top next. All right, so the last part we need to do on our strawberry is to create the leafy top section of that. So let's jump in and look at our reference. So you can see these can go from really wild to very tame. But I think mostly they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 of these little leaves that come off. So we're just going to do 10 of these little bow-shaped little leafy bits. So let's jump in and do that. So I'm going to create in to start my new layer, and then I'm going to turn off these two. And I'm going to grab my cylinder and making sure it has 10 sides. I'm just going to create a little cylinder in there, maybe about 80 millimeters. And I don't need this, so just loop select those polygons and delete, then select the lower facing one with the middle mouse button. So, and just to make sure, I'm going to center this guy as we're starting to work here. So what I want to do is I want to extend out each one of these edges individually, and if I select them all at once, it's going to think I want them all at the same time. So I'm going to hit 2 here to go into edge mode, and I'm going to select every other edge on this, and I'm going to hit the Z for edge extend and just click, because I don't want to extend them out actually just yet. And then I'm going to set my action center to my origin, and I'm going to hit R for scale. I'm just going to scale those out some. Now I'm going to do the exact same thing to the opposing edges. Hit Z, click, and then R to scale. Now I'm going to select all of these outer edges now. Don't worry about making them all perfect and aligned, because that's not really going to matter. And we want to set our action center to local, so each one of these edges is going to have its own local action center. We're going to scale those down. I think that is pretty good. We can kind of look at a top view here, see how that lines up with the size of our berry. I think we could probably get away with making them a little bit bigger. So we're going to set that back to origin. Scale those out. Alright, so now I want to add in some additional edges here. So I'm going to select all of these guys in a loop and hit my Alt-C. I'm going to add maybe 3 edges in there. Now, how about we just do 2 on that? Now I want to make sort of pointy bits on this. So if I convert that to subdivision surfaces, the Catmull Clark, by hitting Shift Tab. Now I'm going to once again go into my edges mode. I'm going to select all of these outer edges. Now I'm going to hit Z one more time to extend those edges. Q to drop the tool. R to scale those guys out. Now we're going to do a interesting little trick here where we're going to go back to the local, scale those in to make the pointy leaf. Now I'm going to hit Control Backspace, basically turn that into a triangle. Select all of these edges and we're going to scale those in. Show our local action center. Just trying to work on that leafy shape there. So it takes a few seconds to select these all out, but it's not bad. Okay, so I think we're going to go in here. We're going to select this interior polygon and hit Shift B to bevel that in. We're going to actually turn off, just hit the tab to turn off the Catmull Clark there so we can see a better idea of what it is we're doing. Shift B, come in again, and we're going to create that stem. So come in about that far, hit Shift B, Shift B, and then we're going to come up to create that stem. So let's convert that back and see what it's looking like. So let's get this edge here and bevel that. Tighten up that little curve. And then up here, get the boundary on there. Let's do the exact same thing. I'm going to select this top. So select the top polygon and grow that. Now I'm going to try a different fall off. I'm going to use this soft selection here. I'm going to get my move tool. And then you can change the scale of this soft selection by dragging the right mouse button. I'm going to move that in a little bit. Maybe set that to ease in. So I think that gives us a pretty decent looking leaf on there. You can tweak the shape a little bit more if you like. Maybe take these outer edges and scale them once more. They're a little fat out at the tip now that I look at it again. Turn off that soft selection. There we go. I think that's just about perfect. Okay, so the next thing we want to do now that we have this modeled is we want to make sure we have a good UV map of this object. So we're going to hit Control Tab to jump into our UV editing space. And this, of course, is the default Modo UV map, which isn't very useful. So I just want to get my UV projection tool, make sure that's set to planar on the Y, and we can just do automatic. Click in there, and we have a perfect UV map. So we are all done in the UV map department with that guy. So I'm going to jump back into my painting layout actually now. And I want to take this object and I want to add some more polygons to it so that I can sculpt it a little bit. So I'm just going to take the whole thing and I'm just going to, making sure I'm in a component mode, I'm going to hit Shift D. And that's going to give me the option to subdivide the polygon. So I'm just going to make that a Catmull Clark. So it's given me some more polygons that we can work with. So next what we're going to do is we're just going to grab the push tool here. And we're just going to be sculpting on the mesh. And we're just going to tweak this so it has more of the shape of those strawberry tops. So if we look back at our reference on these, we don't have to get this crazy, have them flaring up like that. But having some natural sort of variation, have them undulating up and down, I think will get it to look more realistic. So right click to adjust the size. And I think I'm going to have initially just have them going down. So I have a rather large brush, so I want those to kind of... Don't worry about being perfect on all of these because the less perfect they look, the more organic it sort of feels. So it seems as though they sort of sag down a little bit and then the very tip sort of flares out a little bit, comes back up. So I think that is what we're going to try and do. Not to all of them. So remember, holding down the control key makes them go down the opposite direction, and then just regular click and dragging gets them to go up. So I'm going to give this a, drop the tool there and give this a quick surface. Hit M, we're going to call that strawberry top, give it a green color, and click OK on that. And then in the material object, just to make sure we can see it clearly, I'm just going to temporarily make that double-sided. And I want to turn back on my other objects and move this guy up into position. I don't think he's quite big enough for what I've done here, so I'm going to scale that up actually. So we also want to make sure that there's no interpenetration between these two objects, so I'm going to need to continue sculpting on these leaves to make sure that we don't see that penetration happening. Doing a little bit of smoothing on this now, holding down the shift key. We can use the move in here to select some of these guys to Alright, now the last thing I'm going to do here is I want to thicken this guy up. So I'm going to go over here into my model tab under basic and just grab the thicken tool right here at the bottom. Just click in the viewport and we want to push that out 7 or 8 millimeters for the scale that I've modeled my strawberry at. See what that looks like. It looks pretty good. For me, it makes these edges a little oddly thick. So I like the thickness overall, but I'm going to select a few of these uprights that were created. I'm going to hit Alt-L to select the entire loop of that. And then making sure that our action center is still set to local. On that, I'm going to hit R. I'm going to scale these guys down. You can see what this is going to do. So it's just going to scale out that outer edge so it's a little bit thinner there. So I think that is the cap for our strawberry. Let's take this in here and bring it down. I'm going to hit the shift up arrow. I think we're going to take this here, R, and we're going to scale that in reverse and move this guy down. Just so there is no mistake that this is stuck into the top of this berry. Okay. That is the completion of our berry cap, so we can put those all together there and see what our strawberry looks like. It's looking pretty good. Still got a little bit of penetration there that I'm going to go back and fix. And maybe, just maybe, I'm going to make this a little bit larger still. Just a very tiny bit. All right, so that's the modeling of our strawberry. So we started out by creating a displacement texture for the seed, and then we were able to apply that using texture replicators, and then we took that texture replicator, baked it very easily into a displacement map via the diffuse channel, applied that back to a new mesh. Then we just did a simple vertex bevel on the outer flesh body, and then we sculpted up a cap for the top of our strawberry. So all very easy, but all really showing off the various powerful features of Modo and how you can sort of whip through these sort of projects very easily. So in the next video, we're going to tackle the surfacing for this, try and make it look realistic. So I hope you'll join me.